Hi, this is Eva. Tonight I'm going to be talking again about generational trauma, and I wanted to start off by reading a brief definition of betrayal. Betrayal is so painful because at its core it is a violation of trust. It happens in relationships in which trust is expected and presumed. So when it's violated, we're often shocked and we struggle to believe that it's really happening to us. It almost seems surreal. It can feel as if the very ground beneath us is giving way. And then it goes on to say different kinds of betrayal. When betrayal is the result of a physical or sexual abuse perpetrated by a trusted partner or family member, or violence to a child perpetrated by a parent, it is often referred to as betrayal trauma. When we're injured by betrayal, we can suffer high levels of anxiety, depression, anger, sadness, jealousy, decreased self-worth, embarrassment, humiliation, shame, and other trauma symptoms. All right, I'll stop there. So, of all those words, I would say shame is the main one, and humiliation, because a lot of not a lot of, but some of the events of my mom being violent happened in public. So, like the very last, not the last time I saw her, because the last few times I saw her were actually fairly positive, but that was, when she was at the end of her life, but in a nursing home. But the last time I saw her, I think I was maybe 42, that she hit me. I was 42, and I had my child, 4-year-old, with me then, with my husband at the time, and it was like, she just slapped me straight across the face, and I don't know, she didn't like the way I was getting her out of her seatbelt or trying to get her out of the car, and it was in front of people who are all like in rocking chairs, like at the nursing home, and then they were all sort of sitting right where we were getting out of the car, and then my ex-husband was holding our daughter, and she was crying, and then my mom was screaming and yelling, and we had taken her out to dinner. That's what had happened, and we were bringing her back, and she didn't want to go back. She wanted to go back to her house, which of course didn't exist anymore because we had to sell it to pay for the nursing home, and she'd been at the nursing home at that point by like at least 3 years. So I don't know. Who knows? That's usually how it was with my mom. It'd be like no rhyme or reason, she's upset about something, but it'd always be like, what triggered this, because it would always be like massively dramatic, horribly, miserably uncomfortable, like I said, violent experience. And it would be like, sometimes later I'd think back at what actually happened, and it would be like, she was mentally ill. It's like I would try to use logic of somebody who's not schizophrenic to try to understand why a schizophrenic was getting upset. So that doesn't even make any sense. But, and then after she hit me, one of the people in the rocking chairs behind me yelled out real loud, that woman's not wearing any underwear. And it was just like, I was just like, can I just like disappear? Is that like something I can do? And it was, it was fucking hell. And it's just like, I can't believe I'm still doing, I can't believe I'm still going through this. Like, why am I here? What? It was just like, wait. I mean, why did I, you know, that's why I wanted to cut out when I was 18, because I was like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. But I did go back and visit her a couple of times by myself, and I did let her see my kids in the parking lot once when she was in a wheelchair. But, you know, that was it. But anyway, yeah, humiliation and shame and embarrassment and low self-worth. Or I always felt really like, I just felt like, I mean, I know this is wrong mentally, but I would feel like it was a reflection somehow of like who I was. Like I would let her like name calling. I would let the names that she called me, instead of seeing it as like objectively like, okay, this person is ill mentally, and so anything they say, I just have to, that's not like the truth. That's their projection, and they're projecting from, this is somebody who's actively hallucinating, like they don't really know what they're talking about. Like, I mean, like, what they think of me is not who I am. But I don't know if it was because, you know, the really bad incidents with the name calling happened when I was like, preteen, especially when I was like 12. I don't know if it was just because I was that age right before you know, with a girl, like you're really like self-conscious, or you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I had a pretty normal like time at school. I was popular and stuff, and I didn't have too many problems, but you know, I mean, you're going through changes, turning into a teenager, and I was just like, I guess self-conscious, and it just, she would, because it was the worst time she had ever attacked me. Well, no, not, I mean, since I was 4 was she hadn't attacked me that bad since I had the head injury, but it was pretty bad. She'd really like physically gone after me through the house, like looking for me to beat me, you know, and it was just like, I hid in one closet, and then she came in there screaming and going through the shelves trying to find me, and then I went to the second closet and got in there, and it was like she just dragged me out by my legs, you know, just yanked me onto the floor, and it was like just started kicking the shit out of me, and calling me scum of the earth. That was the worst incident I ever had with her. But for whatever reason, like, God knows I've told this story like too many times in therapy over the years, I like believed her. Like, it like stuck with me like forever. Like, I like literally, I don't understand that, because it's like, I would walk by sometimes. I remember once I walked by her talking on the phone to the judge. It's just like the judge's assistant or something, because she was always getting arrested, and she was screaming and yelling and telling the judge that he was a fruitcake. And I remember thinking, well, that's a very good idea. One, and then the second thing I thought is like, okay, that's almost funny, fruitcake, okay, but it's like, why did it, you know, like that? I was like, why did he get to be a fruitcake? Why did I have to be like such a gross scum of the earth? It was like, why did she choose such a graphically gross description for me? It was just so, you know, obviously she didn't see me as human. And I already was like super tense and, you know, as always, miserable to be there and dreading it and unhappy the whole time I was there and scared of her. And also trying to like dutifully be like, I guess, a good daughter or whatever you want to call it for my grandmother. Like I wanted to, because I was the only person there who was young, so I felt like, you know, I needed to do as much work as I could because I couldn't physically do as much as I could, which was maybe part of the reason they wanted me to go, honestly, if I'm being honest. They needed the labor. But, you know, this all goes back to like, goes back to my family's strong desire to keep everything private. Like they didn't, my grandmother had this terrible fear of like anybody knowing about, you know, our terrible secret, you know, that she was crazy. And I mean, she lived in another state. She lived like several states away from us. So we would have to go there for long periods of time and stay at a hotel and just go over there, you know, all day. And then we'd take her out somewhere in the evening for dinner or a movie or whatever she could get through. And then, I don't know. We would try to do other things like take her for drives, but then she'd spend the whole time like throwing ash all over me when I was in the back seat with her. It's like she would just like she never burn me with a cigarette, but she would, it's like she just ashed on me the whole time. It was just like, I don't know. It was just always like a humiliating experience where I just ended up feeling like worse than trash, you know, like I just was like, what is my role in this family? Like, somebody please tell me, you know, like, 'cause I feel pretty like shitty about everything. And I'd have so much anger and I have to stuff it down. Like I was always stuffing my feelings and, you know, I would get headaches and stomach aches and I would just have all this resentment for her, but then I felt like I couldn't ever show it because it's like she's mentally ill, so it's like it's not really her fault. So, but I would think I would be like, why can't she just go to a mental hospital and stay there? Like, why do we have to do all this? I mean, she clearly can't live on her own because we're spending all this time like fixing all her messes. Like, my grandmother would buy her like VCRs, and she literally it was in its box, and she would go throw it in the dumpster out back. I mean, she just would do whatever. I mean, you could just never tell what the hell was gonna be happening over there. And I know her brother, my favorite uncle, you know, he went over there and helped on some visit with her, which he didn't go very often, but he tried to repair her air conditioner or something, and I guess she was just kicking in the whole time, and he was just like, he just got mad and left, you know, and he never visited her again after that. It was just like, that's how it was, you know. She just honestly just wanted to be alone with her voices. She didn't really want company. And she did want to go out, though. She did want to go, like, if, you know, you were going to take her somewhere, she wanted to go. But like once we took her to the beach and she just wandered out like way past the, like, and it was like the ocean, like way past the buoys or where you were ever supposed to go. And then it was this like the lifeguard had to go get her. It was just like, it was just always like that. It was just like, okay, well, you know, whatever happens here while we're out in public, it'll probably be pretty embarrassing and another humiliating experience. But then I'd feel guilty because then I'd be like, well, I mean, like, she can't have a car because she can't drive because they took away her license. It's just like, I mean, just take the bus or walk everywhere. So it's like, then I feel like shitty. Like, well, I don't know. Like, I mean, she does deserve to get to do things. It's not her fault she's like this, but it just really comes down to the fact that there's like absolutely no mental health care that really works that well in America, in my opinion. You know, there used to be like where they would have people in institutions for long periods of time, and they do have some state hospitals, obviously, around the country, but you know, there's so many people on the wait list for those places, it's actually ridiculous. So I have volunteered to do art projects with the mentally ill before, and like for social work school, and like they have people from like all over the whole state, and we live in a really big state, so it's like it gets filled up really fast. And there's, in general, all the long-term places for the mentally ill were gotten rid of in like a period between the 50s and 70s because new laws came about, and it was like, you know, because people were doing lame things like instead of men getting divorced, they would like commit their wife to like insane asylums, you know, or like family members, you know, if they had a daughter who was, you know, not doing what they felt, you know, so she had a child of a wedlock, or, you know, she was doing something that they did not think that was proper, like they could literally sign her away. So it was like they changed the laws, so they made the laws more like fair to an individual, instead of like, you know, you don't want to take someone's rights away. You don't want an innocent person to be put in a mental hospital long term, basically. So it's like these people were signing people in that for other reasons, you know, for their own selfish purposes. So they changed the laws, but then now the problem is the only long term places there are, there's huge competition for them. They're incredibly expensive. They're often far away from like where the families live. And then the problem with them is like basically anybody that I've ever met, I mean, this is my opinion, who has like a severe hallucinatory mental illness, so that would be like bipolar 1, like schizophrenia, schizoaffective, you know, the list goes on. But the type of people with those kind of conditions, like, it's kind of like alcoholism or drug addiction in the way that, like, they don't actually believe that there's anything wrong with them. Like, they'll fight with you, you know, they won't take their medicine. Like, back then they didn't have injections like they do the once a month injections for a lot of schizophrenics now, but back when my mom had it, like, she would have to take a pill every day, and like literally she refused to do that. I mean, this is a woman who let her teeth rot out, her whole lower, she had no teeth, it was all rotten, and or just gums, because she wouldn't go to the dentist for like 30 years. So it's like you can barely get them to do basic hygiene. So it's like, how on earth are you going to get them to voluntarily sign themselves into a mental health facility for long term? Like, I mean, they're not going to do it because they don't think anything's wrong with them. Like, if you tell them the voices that they're listening to aren't there, like, I mean, most of the time they don't even argue with you, because it's like, it's too hard for them to even focus on answering your question. Like, they're too distracted by what they're seeing. It's kind of like if you go into like your 13-year-olds and you're like, you got to get off the Xbox, and they're playing and playing, and they're like barely noticing you, or like they're not listening to you, they're not like stopping playing the game, they're just like completely, you know, like it's like they're a zombie. It's kind of like that. It's just like the only difference is that, you know, she was extremely violent, so if you confronted her with anything like that, it was just like, you know, just kick your ass, you know. Like, it was like scary. It was like dangerous to talk to her about anything like that. So we would just slip Haldol into her Pepsis, and I mean, that's all she should never even go fill a prescription, even if she was given money. So that's the problem with long-term mental institutions, or even short-term. Like, a lot of times people have to put someone in on like a 72-hour hold, or like there's these different, I think they're called 500 something codes that like the police or a judge can get someone against their will put into a facility for 3 days or something. But that's the most you can get them forcefully put in. So it's like they're barely there long enough to get on medication long enough for them to have an attitude change, like. So it's like by the time they're released, like they haven't had enough care to, like, you can't talk to somebody who's actively hallucinating in therapy and work on their issues, like they're busy, like, in their own world. There's no common ground, especially not somebody who's been wrapped up in their psychosis for years and years and years. Like, they're just going to talk to you about their psychosis. It's, and ramble about all these things that, don't make any, one of the terms they call it is, oh gosh, what is it called? Something soup, where, oh gosh, where, word soup or something, where it's like, word salad, that's it, where it's like, they'll just be like saying words that have like no correlation to each other, and so, that's part of it. So it's like, we're not gonna, like I said, you can't take them logically, which is why I've had such serious problems with, even though I have a lot of self-confidence, I have terrible self-worth, I think. And one of the reasons is because, all this abuse and neglect over the years. And unfortunately for me, what I did after having these incidents with my mom was rebel seriously and get involved with a much older man who was, domestic violence and alcoholism. And then I ended up going to college, straightening out. And then quickly after that, as soon as I graduated, like, I turned out to have a drug addiction for 3 years straight, 3.5 years. I mean, it's like the grief, all that anger and grief and humiliation. It's like, it's all stuffed down there, and it's like waiting, it's waiting to come up like a volcano. And it's like, various times in my life, I would rebel terribly. And it's like, instead of hurting other people, I would just severely hurt myself by these incidents, like the drug addiction, the, horrible relationships with men I would get into. And it's like, I mean, yeah, it hurt my family terribly, but it's like, as it was hurting them, it's like I didn't have the kind of sympathy, because I was a real brat. I didn't have the sympathy for them I should have, because at the time I was just thinking, we just went through all that shit with mom, and like, you could have made better decisions. Like, this wouldn't have, like, I wouldn't be doing this if that hadn't happened, I guess. But then it sounds like, sounds like, I don't know, like I'm blaming them or not taking responsibility for my own shitty behavior in reaction to these things, So it's like a weird line. But, and then what would happen is I would just have so much shame and embarrassment, and I just feel like different, because I was doing these really extreme things. And then it's like, even when I would get out of them and I'd be back into regular life and have a good job, or like a car, and like I'd have a regular life, it'd be like, I would just have all this like deep shame about the things I had done. And I mean, my grandparents like when we were not visiting my mom, like the home that I stayed with them in, you know, was very lovely, and we had a good family life. I mean, it was just this terrible denial. It was the denial. It was the complete lack of accountability. Like, literally nobody would take any accountability for what was happening. And lack of information, total lying, like blank-faced lying about what was going on, and complete, like, it wasn't like, do you know, you want to go like one time this year instead of 3? It'd be like, there's never any choice, you know. It's just like, you know, all or nothing. But I think it's because they needed me to do a lot of the physical labor, you know. And I mean, I feel like a jerk just saying that, but I think that's true. Because that's what happens when you keep secrets. Like, they can't have, like, they're not going to hire anybody to come clean my mom's house, because that would mean somebody would know. And it's like, who cares if somebody in, like, another state that we're never going to see again knows that, you know, she's, you know, in a house that's riddled with, like, you know, filth. I mean, we would obviously have cleaned up as much as we could before the cleaners got there, which is another ridiculous scenario, but my family would not do that. They didn't want. It was like, and that is in itself why I had so much anger and hostility towards my family, even though they did raise me well, is that I always felt that it's like, why, when I'm your grandchild and, like, your only other female child that you've ever raised, like, your only grandchild, like, why are you choosing the feelings of this stranger who could help us? Like, we have the money, they could come do that, you know, we could take mom somewhere, we should be out of there for a little bit. Like, why are their feelings more important than mine? I just want to know. And it's just like, that's like something, like, you couldn't bring it up, you couldn't ask. It's like all those questions would be like shut down immediately, like no one's gonna talk to you, like just pretend it didn't happen. It was just like, you could never, like, just talk about it, you know. It was just, all they would do is say the same phrases over and over again, you know, and it's like the same song and dance, which is like a big cover-up lie about what was really happening. And, like, I mean, I don't know if it was my grandmother's generation, but they were just super into, like, denial, you know. They would just talk about it like it was normal, but it wasn't normal. It was, like, sick what was going on over there, you know. And I'm not saying they were sick for letting it go on. I mean, it's like, there really is no solution when you have a family member who's that severely mentally ill. I'm sorry, there's just not, because it's like I said, they won't take their medicine. And most of those medicines have such horrendous side effects that even if they take it, you know, a lot of times they still hear voices. They maybe just be like for shorter periods of time. It's like not like a cure-all. It's not like they can get rid of schizophrenia. It's, they're stuck with it. And, like, children are schizophrenics, I think it's like they have a 50% chance of inheriting it. So that was why I was always paranoid that I would get it, because it's a pretty high percentage, and I was an only child. So, and then my father also was bipolar 1, so I was like, oh, well, what are the chances I'm going to get out of this, you know, without a severe mental illness? It seems like chances are low. And then a lot of these mental illnesses, they don't occur, like, for males, they can get mental illness, like, usually it happens between, like, 17 and 22 if they have schizophrenia. Schizoaffective is just bipolar and schizophrenia together. I don't know that much about schizoaffective, but and I know for females to get schizophrenia, they're usually have it later, so it's more like, well, my mom had it at 19, so I guess I'd say 19 to 27. So much longer period of time where it could develop. So it's like leading up to that, you're just waiting around to see if you're going to get it. Like literally, that's what I would do. I was just, and anytime I had like anything weird, like physically, or like if I had depression or anxiety, I would just be like, oh, well, I guess I'm, on my way to, and I had really bad, I guess PTSD from when I was a kid from the stuff that happened with my mom with the head injury. Like I had sleep paralysis. I had like horrendous nightmares. I just, I had things that like I would not talk to anybody about because I was too ashamed. So like I did not tell like the school nurse. I like tell nobody, no friends or anything about. And that was part of like our family thing, was like people pleasing. Like my grandmother was an amazing person, but she was the biggest people pleaser, and she, would just always put on like kind of almost like a smile for everything. Like, and it's like, why are you smiling? Like our lives suck right now. Like, but it's just like we would just put on this, I don't know, like wear a mask and put on this front like everything was okay. It wasn't. So, there's just a lot of that going on. And, like I said, like the women in our family, for whatever reason, widowhood or, men who overworked to death. So it's like the women were just on their own at home with all the kids. And my grandmother had 2 children who were paralyzed from polio. So one in a wheelchair, and then the other one, my mom had that deformed arm and a back brace to prevent scoliosis. So, she had like 2 disabled kids by herself with like no help. So it's like all the women in my family, and then like I was married to someone who had a drug addiction, a severe one, and I did many times be the breadwinner and deal with the children. And I feel really guilty about that whole thing because I should have left many years earlier. And my ex ended up getting clean. He's been clean for a long time since our divorce. And it's like, I think now, like, I should have like left years earlier. That was the only thing that like kind of kickstarted his like actually getting help. But it's like all my codependency and like fixing all his problems for him, and it was terrible. And we did exactly what I did. Well, I was like what I had to go through as a kid with my grandmother. It's like I repeated a lot of the same behavior, and it's embarrassing to say that, but that is the truth. Where like our electricity would be shut off because he told me he paid the bill and he didn't, for months, and stuff like that would happen. It would just be like normal for us. And it's like a lot of dysfunction behind closed doors, but it's like I didn't want to, I don't know, I guess in that way I was sick like my grandmother. Like I didn't want people to know my marriage was not what it looked like. And my kids paid for that, and I regret it now. And that is I'll probably end on this, but like that is a great example of generational trauma. It's like you grow up thinking, I'll never do that to my kids. I will never act like, we'll always, say what's happening. We're not going to like hide things or be in denial, or like none of that's going to happen. But the truth is that when you have a family member who has an addiction or a mental illness, that kind of dynamic happens. There's like denial, and then there's like nobody really knows what to do to solve the problem. So there's just like all this sort of frantic, I don't know what you want to call it, like schedules of covering everything up. And I don't know, there's just all this weird dysfunctional behavior that goes on that like everybody sort of doesn't talk about, but everybody kind of knows to do it. And it's just like, so I basically ended up doing what I criticized her for doing, which was like, you know, do what a lot of people who have a family member like that, you focus on the sick person, the person you think is going to die. Like you put everything into that person, and then everybody else is just like, they just end up being like worker bees and like doing all this work to cover the person who's not doing anything, you know, because they have an illness, and it's just a big sick mess. And I had a lot of guilt after that for what I felt was my role. Was like, I should have, like I said, stood up for myself and not done that. But I can't change the past. And yeah, I'm gonna end here.